So I'm Alana Allen, and I am the founder and executive director of I'm a Queen, and I'm also the owner of Alana Knows Nonprofits. So what I do is I help people to start their nonprofit organizations, but I'm very passionate about making sure that people understand the proper way of starting their organization. So I've decided to do these conversation series with founders that I believe are doing a great job in the community, and they may be able to add value to everyone else who, may have an organization. So if I can get you to please comment in the chat who you are, if you have a nonprofit organization, and what city you're from, so we can know who's in the house, okay? And then I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Mr. Blake Odum, who is the founder of the Motivational Foundation. And tonight, we're gonna be talking about the power of donor relations and how to have relationships with your donors. And when I found out about the Motivational Foundation, I think last year, I realized, like, with your mission statement, the mission is to give teenagers or give youth the opportunity to be able to travel to different colleges. And when I looked at the format of that nonprofit, I realized this nonprofit has to ask for a lot of donations in order to stay active and relevant. So I felt like he was a great fit. So, Mr. Blake, I'm going to ask you the first question, okay?
Okay.
So what is one word that best describes you and why?
One word that best describes me. Now a few words come to mind, but I am going to give you the word driven. Simply because when we started the Motivational Foundation back in 2010, I don't want to tell my age, but I was very young. I was still a teenager. I was 19 years old, actually. So just the challenges over the last decade of learning, oftentimes when you are young, I don't think people really take you as serious as they should sometimes. So I've had to be very driven in my quest to make something out of the Motivational Foundation.
Okay, awesome. Now, what was your career background before you got started? But you just said you started at 19, so maybe you kind of grew as the nonprofit grew. So share information about that.
Great. My career, well, actually, I was a college student when we started the Motivational Foundation, but I studied at Eastern Michigan University. I dual majored in film and media studies and African American studies. And my plan was to graduate from college and be Spike Lee Jr. But I have only worked in public education. So public education was more of a calling for me. And, just understanding the ins and outs of public education, I knew there was a need for some additional services, which is kind of what birthed the Motivational Foundation.
Got it. And why did you decide to start the organization?
Okay. So the history behind starting the Motivational Foundation, it stems back to when I graduated from high school. I was accepted into Howard University. I was accepted into Morehouse College, and Clark Atlanta University. My plan was to do a dual program at Clark Atlanta and Morehouse. Spike Lee was a guest professor at the time, coming out of NYU and helping them kind of reshape a program at that time. So I wanted to be a part of it. And my grandmother wrote a check and paid my deposit and stuff to go to Clark Atlanta University. And I performed so well on our standardized test in Michigan. It was called the MEAT test at the time, Michigan Educational Assessment Practice, whatever, I don't know. So I ended up getting a scholarship behind that. But my mother discovered that my girlfriend at the time she had transferred or she pulled back on her original intent to go to a school in Indiana, and I was going to Georgia. she had committed to go to Georgia Tech. So my mom was like, you can't go, you're not going, you staying in Michigan. And it was just a big ordeal at the time. So I ended up at Eastern Michigan University, and I absolutely loved the people. I hated the school. So at that time, you know, I'm still entrenched in Blackness, in HBCU culture, and show style marching bands, all of that I was looking forward to experiencing once I got to Atlanta. So I decided that I was going to take a trip to the Honda Battle of the Bands in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was still connected to some of my friends who were in high school at the time. And they wanted to make a trip out of it. Like, you know, nobody wants to do our senior trip, because they were a rowdy group, okay? You know, we had some dignity in class about ourselves when we graduated. That group was a little rowdy. I understand why nobody wants to deal with them. But we made a trip out of it. And, you know, at that time, we were going to charter a bus. And we just came up with this crazy idea, like, everybody get $200 together and we're going to just make this thing happen. Well, once everybody got $200 together, we were like still $6,000 or $7,000 in the hole. So we were not able to get a bus. We got two 15-passenger vans. We rented them at the time. My grandmother, we weren't even old enough to rent vehicles because we were not old enough to be properly insured. You had to be 25 to be on whatever type of insurance this was. So my grandmother and my adopted father, John Rhymes, my grandmother rented a van, John Rhymes rented a van. We took about 20 students to Atlanta, and John Rhymes went. And, you know, we had the little consent forms and everything. We had kind of turned it into like a senior trip. And, you know, when I'm looking back, I'm like, man, parents really trusted me to take their kids somewhere, and I was 19 years old. Like, what in the world? But from that experience, it was such a grand and memorable experience. Like, everything was just, we were blown away by the experience. So when we get to Atlanta, I ended up navigating us to the wrong hotel. And it took us, my GPS took us to Buckhead, Georgia, to the Embassy Suites. Even though we were going to stay at the Embassy Suites, I guess it was just not the type of Embassy Suites like the one in Buckhead. So we get there, and the guy is going through the computer, and he's like, I don't have a reservation for you guys, and I'm sorry. And he was a young, I'm never going to forget, I don't remember his name, I'm never going to forget him, but I still can see him in my mind. He was studying to be a doctor, and he was working at the hotel during the nighttime. And he asked what we were there for, and I told him, and he said, well, how old are you? I said, I'm 19 years old. And he said, wait a minute. And he goes in the back, and he said, well, how much did the other hotel quote you? I said, we were quoted at $99 a night. And he's like, sir, our room prices are like $289 a night or $3 something a night. I was like, oh man. And then so I'm asking him how to get directions to this other hotel. And he's like, I'm gonna call over there and see what's what. So he comes back from the back room right behind the counter where you check, the check-in counter. And he comes back and he says, I tell you what, I'm so impressed and so pleased with what you're doing. I'm gonna let you stay at this hotel for $99 a night.
Wow.
And so from that experience, we were just gonna do a one-time thing and be done. And all of the young people were so blown away by it. They came to us, like me and my dad, we were sitting at the table having breakfast. You know, those Embassy Suites breakfasts, the omelets and stuff now. So they came up to us and they said, we gotta let other people experience this. This can't be it. We need to make this happen every year. And we've been running with this every year since 2010. And that was really the birth of the Motivational Foundation.
Wow. So far with your program, how many students have you impacted, taken on trips? Like, how many students have you worked with over the past 10 years?
Well, that's a good question. And we're currently operating in 5 states right now. So the impact is growing exponentially. And I always say we don't even have enough help to, help us with everything that we're doing for as fast as we're growing. But we have impacted over 2,000 students, and that is growing. And I'm talking about underserved, inner city, urban area, all the terms that we put on Black students in poor high schools, those have been the students who we have targeted over the last 10 years, and we've impacted them. And we have many success stories of students. One of my favorite success stories comes from our very first college tour, where a gentleman by the name of Terrence Patton Hill, he wasn't going to go, and he had came up with his $200, and he was like, I'm not going. And once I talked to Terrence, I said, well, why are you not going? He said, because I'm not messing with Morehouse. I said, well, why not? He said, I applied and I didn't get in, so I don't want to go. I don't even want to go and see the campus.
Oh.
I said, man, come on and go. I was like, you can always transfer. Just go and see it. You may fall in love and you may want to transfer. So on the college tour, we're touring the campus. Again, we run into the Dean of Admissions, who is blown away by what we're doing at this age. Like, y'all should be wanting to play Xbox. Y'all should be wanting to do a whole bunch of other things. And this is what you guys are deciding to do. So he took Terrence away from the group while we were doing a group tour. And we saw Terrence running back to us, catching up with the group, like maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes later. He had been admitted on site. And maybe 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, Terrence graduated from Morehouse and went to work for JP Chase Morgan Bank in New York. So the success stories are endless, and that's why we're doing this work. It's very meaningful work.
Absolutely. And we're now about to get into the questions about donations. So if everybody in the chat, if you can post, if you have already asked someone for a donation, or you just haven't done it because you're scared. So could everybody put in the chat if you've already asked for a donation or you just haven't done it at this point. So Blake, it takes money, like money. Like I manage a nonprofit for a mentoring group, and we haven't gone on trips. So my thing is, how have you been able to sustain this organization, and are the kids paying any additional fee? Are y'all sponsoring everyone? Like, how are you making this happen in 5 states, sir?
Great. That's a great question. So when we talk about asking for money, what made me know that it was okay or that people would support this work, this stems back to the very first college tour as well. Back in 2010, there were some people who gave money for students to go because they were so thrilled with students having the opportunity to experience something like this. And I remember Jessica Bryson, she's married now, her last name isn't Bryson, Matthew Washington, Jeremy Tyler, Tiana Dudley, Brandy Marbury, we're all in one of the hotel rooms at the Embassy Suites. After all the bills were paid, after Jeremy and I both maxed out our credit cards for gas for the vans.
Oh my God.
After all the bills and stuff were paid, I remember us sitting in the Embassy Suites, and I'm like, well, this was fun, but, I don't know if I'm gonna be doing this. And Jessica, who we had put over the funds that people were turning in, kind of like a checks and balance type of system, she pulled out this envelope, and it was like over $1,000 in this envelope. And she was like, y'all, this is all of the money that we have left over. It's $1,000. And this money had come from people who had donated. So we had our local funeral home in Flint, Michigan, who had donated money. Former teachers, some teachers of the students had donated money, administrators. And so people were supporting this work. So the next year, Jeremy and I both pledged to ourselves, we are not maxing our credit cards out. And I'm just gonna, you said this is a safe space, so I'm gonna be
safe space.
I took a hit on my credit from that credit card, but it was worth it, and Jeremy and I said, we are not going into debt anymore. So we started soliciting donations from people, and the money began to come in. So operating, as we're growing, of course, the budget is growing, the expenses are growing. To pull something off like this for about 50 students is in the neighborhood of about $50,000 to $60,000 a year, just for this one piece that we do. So what we have been successful at doing is having conversations with people who are linked to this type of work. And I always believe in partnering with others. There is no need for competition in nonprofits. There is enough work for everybody. So if we can partner on some things, I believe in partnerships, but soliciting donations from people who believe in your vision. One of our biggest donors here in North Carolina is actually an anonymous donor who was blown away by our work after another person who is not a donor. She supports in other ways, but this person was explaining our work and our mission and what we do to this anonymous donor, where it just so happened that this anonymous donor had a conversation with this young lady about wanting to invest in things like this, wanting to give underserved, at-risk, urban area students the opportunity to have experiences, or to try to help close the opportunity gap for students. So out of the blue, this person wrote us a check for $22,000 North Carolina students. So it's just a matter of not being afraid to ask. And you know, I have started to approach some of my regular donors. You know, they give annually. I have some who give monthly. I have some who give annually. But I have started to approach some of the ones who give annually. If I pick up the phone and call them, or I shoot them a text or write them a letter, I'll say, I'm calling to beg you again, but it's for a good cause. And they'll start laughing, and, you know, they give because they support the work. And more than anything, people want to see a return on their investment. So when you have people who can tell their stories, even if some of our students don't decide to go to a Black college, if they say, and I have the data to support this, we have students right here in North Carolina. We do a survey every year, pre-survey and a post-survey. Well, one thing that stood out to me about our North Carolina students more than anything, North Carolina has the most HBCUs than any other state in the country. Well, it's between North Carolina and Alabama. So when we did, one of the questions on our survey is this your first time ever visiting an HBCU? And so I remember, you know, when they did the post-survey, and I was looking at my phone on the bus, and we're on our way home, and I'm getting all the answers from the post-survey. And I remember getting on the mic on the bus, and I'm like, guys, like, I'm getting mad at this point. Like, don't play about this survey. Like, we need this. This is how we solicit our donors. Like, this is important data. Like, don't play about this survey. And people were like, what are you talking about? I said, it asks, is this your first time ever touring an HBCU? And 86% of the people have said no, and we live right down the street from A&T. I was like, well, y'all gonna have to take the survey over. So I did just by a show of hands, how many of you all have did a formal tour of North Carolina A&T State University? I'm talking about Greensboro students. Only a few hands went up. And I said, this is why this work is important in this area, because you'll have people who tell you all the time, and I've been met with this here in Greensboro. You have people who tell you, well, I'm not going to invest money into your organization because you're taking our students and you're taking them to other universities when they need to come to ours. Well, they're not even touring your campus. So, and A&T is one of our favorite places to visit with all of our students from across the country. But the work is meaningful, and when you have success stories and the data to show, people are willing to give more money.
I think that's important. I think one of the key things that you just said, you said you picked up the phone and you speak and you talk to your former, current donors. Now, what is a way that you're able to attract new donors?
One way that we have been highly successful in attracting new donors, each year we have our community partners brunch, which is basically, it's like a banquet. And we invite donors, we invite potential donors. We sell tables, we sell tickets, which is a fundraiser within itself. But, you know, I grew up in a Kojic church. I'm not sure if anybody knows what that means, but
we do. I do.
you know, once you gave your offering and the trustees went in the back to count it, they would say, okay, we need some more money. And they came out and they took up another offering. And then after the pastor preached, then they took up a preacher's offering. So before you know it, I mean, you done gave and gave and gave. And I believe that in meaningful work, when people have the means to do it, then people will definitely do it. So at our community partners brunch, not only do we sell tickets, but we also ask people to leave a donation. And that has been a huge hit. And from that, we have attracted more donors who give on the annual basis.
Wow. Now, my next question is for the people in this room, because I think some people, you either have a nonprofit or you just got started. So what advice would you give them to start out in the beginning stages of soliciting donations or just preparing to ask for donations?
I would say start with the people who are close to you, friends and family, just a small group. And even if your goal is to reach $1,000, I would say think of 10, and I even tell our students this when we're doing fundraisers with them, think of 10 people who you know you could go to and say, hey, I would like for you to make a contribution of $100 to this. And don't just say, I would like for you to make $100 contribution to my girls group or to my mentoring program. Have something on paper where they can read it, where they can see some pictures, give them an infographic or something where they know once I give you $100, it's going to support this, something tangible. It's going to support this. So even if they cannot see the work that you're doing, they can see it on paper. And if you go to those people who you know you can depend on, that is your very first fundraiser. And then what you do from there, you have them reach out to others. A lot of the donations that we get every year, we tell our donors, find somebody to match what you're giving.
Ooh.
If you can find somebody, and you know, that becomes very competitive, especially with people who are excited to give. They say, I can think of about 2 people that will match it. And then people who are highly respected enough to give what they're giving, when they pick up the phone and they call and they say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I just gave the Motivational Foundation $1,000. I want you to match it.
I like that.
You know what they're gonna do? They're gonna say, okay, who do I make the check out to? How can I give? And you gotta get in the habit of developing those type of relationships with donors, and then follow up and say thank you. Yeah. I tell donors all the time, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I even gave an award to the person who made it possible for that anonymous donation, because I knew by giving that person the award, the person who really made the donation was the recipient of it. They just don't want to come forward and say who they are. But stuff like that is very meaningful to show people that you are grateful for what they contribute to your work. My grandmother taught us growing up, 2 of the most important words that you can say to somebody is thank you.
That's right. And I think also another thing that we have to remember is that people do not give money because you're a nonprofit. People give money because they want to give money to you. Right. They want to give money to what they see. They want to see the evidence. You know, they want to feel the evidence. So what has been your formula of maintaining relationships with people? And I think it kind of stems from your grandmother, because it's like you keep bringing her up. But what has been the formula to maintain these relationships? Because this is 10 years of success.
Well, it hasn't, and I want to tell you this. We have had some struggles, and I want people to understand that. As a matter of fact, I'll give you my formula, but before I do that, I'm going to insert this. There was a year, I want to say it was our 5th year, either our 4th, no, it was our 5th year, where we got a lot of students. I want to say that year we served maybe 101 students from Flint, Michigan, who traveled with us. and we were in the hole. I mean, we put a cap on what we ask students to pay, and even then, that cap number, students don't pay it, so we still have to fundraise to help cover the expenses. But that year, the cap was $375, and we took students all the way to Florida for 5 days, 4 nights, and we were in the hole by like $7,000. And again, $7,000. That was like the first year too. And I said that year, like, I'm not going through all of this again. I'm not going into debt. I'm not swiping my credit cards. I'm just going to cancel, and then that's going to be that. So we ended up speaking with actually my wife Olivia. I was on her, like, I need you to call this person, this person, this person, this person, and ask them for a donation. And I'm thinking in my head, how am I going to get 70 people to give $100? I'm trying to figure it out, you know. So some of those on my list, I'm like, well, they probably give 200. If I hit the funeral home up for another donation, they'll probably give another 500. And I'm trying to map it out before I cancel. Well, one of the particular donors who we reached out to, and we ended up naming the college tour after her because she saved the organization that year. She called me and she said, Olivia told me that you wanted me to make a contribution. First of all, tell me what it is that you're doing. And you know, you can tell as you're talking that she's writing. And she said, and what days was it? What they're going to be going on what days? And I'm telling her, and she said, okay. And she said that you guys are in the red, and I'm going to try to get some additional people to give. Tell me how much. And I'm like, I don't really want to tell you exactly. I just want you to make it. She said, well, tell me how much you are so that we can start trying to pull some people together and figure it out. And I told her, and she said, okay. She said, well, I'm going to make a contribution, and I'll call you tomorrow, and then, you know, we'll move forward from there, and I'm going to try to get you some additional support. I said, okay. She called me the next morning, and she said, I'm going to do a wire transfer, and I need your bank information.
Wow.
The bank information for the foundation. And I'm thinking, like, you know, oh, no, this was like a week before the college tour. This was crunch time. So I told her, and I'm thinking, like, she's going to make her little $250 contribution, and then maybe she's pulled some money together from some other people, and then I'm like, but, you know, I don't be handing my bank information out like that. So I told her, thank you. I said, whatever you have given, I appreciate it. We're going to figure it out. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for reaching out to others, so on and so forth. So I get a call from my bank, maybe like 15 minutes after she did this wire transfer. And they said, I just want to let you know, I'm not sure if this is fraudulent activity. You have a wire transfer coming in from this person in the amount of $7,000.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I said, what? And I called her back in tears. She saved the organization that year. So as a thank you to her, and as a way to pay tribute to her, we ended up naming the college tour after her.
Wow.
Because, you know, and she gives every single year. She gives, and you know, by having somebody who believes in your work that much, somebody so credible, when you put their name on something, with their permission, of course, it also lets other people know that this is good ground to sow in. So my formula has been always to honor people who have continued to honor us. We don't ever want to be a poor steward of the finances that we receive from our donors. So we figure out ways to honor them. We just did a huge t-shirt fundraiser for the Motivational Foundation for one of our equity initiatives that we're going to embark on. So one thing that I decided to do is some of our donors who were liking the post, I just sent them shirts. So when they get that shirt, you know, even though they saw that it was a $25 shirt, they saw everybody else saying, I'm getting mine today, I just bought mine. They saw all of that on Facebook. But when they get theirs in the mail unexpected and it's a free shirt, that means something to them. It lets people know they're still thinking about me and they appreciate me. When people feel appreciated, they will go to the ends of the earth for you.
Wow. So the key takeaway for the formula is to make sure that people feel valued, they feel appreciated, they feel heard, they matter. I think that's awesome.
Have some input. I mean, let them have some input in what you're doing. Even if you don't decide to use it, you don't have to say, no, I don't think that's a whack idea or that's not good. When people have input, you just make them think it's the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah, absolutely. Even if you're never going to use it, you're absolutely right. And now people feel heard. So now they feel invested into your, outside of their finances, they actually feel really invested into your organization and into the work you're doing and your mission. And that is very important because ultimately, people really do give great ideas. And as you're doing work over the course of so many years, you come up with, this is the formula that works. ABC equals D. And people will say, okay, you've been doing that for the last 10 years, ABC equals D. Have you thought about this? Or what if you incorporate this? And before you know it, you're like, I never thought to add Z into this, or I never thought to add W into it. And before you know it, I mean, people will elevate you. And that is why it serves to have great minds at the table as well. Yeah, and the one thing I just took away from that, you have to be open to receive. Like, I don't, it's not based off of like whatever spirituality someone has or belief system, but I just think you have to be willing to be open to receive. And there's a nonprofit on here, Bold to Be You community, and the founder, her name is Renee. And the one thing I love about her organization and the work she's doing, she's helping senior citizens. And what she does is, it's like almost every day, like probably 3 times a day, she is posting on social media the items she's picking up for them, going to the grocery store. She'll say the exact amount that she needs for somebody to sponsor a senior citizen. And it makes me give all the time because I'm like, oh, she makes it so simple for me to help her. And the one advice I would give to people is stop making it so difficult for people to give you money. When people see your website, the first thing they should see is donate. They should see donate. So right now I want to open the floor up for any questions that anyone has. If you have a question, you can unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat. So I'm going to open it up for questions for anybody who wants to ask anything. Let's see here. Come on, y'all got all this good advice.
Hi, this is Renee with Both to Be You community. I do have a question. I thought about doing like postcards to businesses, like our local businesses, to see about getting donations. How do you feel about that?
Renee, I mean,
what is your opinion about that?
I'm actually looking around my desk because I have a stack of postcards, and postcards, this is why postcards are so good. We take pictures when we travel of our students, and people want to see that. Like, people want to see what you're doing. People want to see you working in the community. People want to see you out with the senior citizens. People want to see that. You put that on a postcard and a message on the back asking for a donation, people will donate. And the reason why postcards are so good is because postcards are very inexpensive to get made professionally, and they are actually cheaper to mail than a regular letter. There's actually a postcard stamp, which is less expensive than a regular stamp, and it still makes it to them. And I like postcards. I would prefer if somebody were going to ask me for something cute like that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question. This is Jamie.
Hey, Jamie.
Hi. So with COVID going on right now, how has your fundraising efforts either increased or decreased? Because you can't do as much as you would like because of the climate that we're in. But just kind of seeing how you have either tailored your fundraising efforts or just kind of kept them the same.
Great. That's a great question. I personally, I have felt the impacts of COVID when it comes to our donations, especially in the beginning. When the pandemic first really became a big thing in the United States and we started shutting everything down, we were only a few weeks out from our 11th annual college tour that we had to postpone. So of course, our donations at that time completely stopped because in people's minds, they were saying, well, y'all are not going anywhere, so there's no need for me to give at this time. However, it made us take a step back and kind of restructure some of the work that we were doing. And a lot of this came from people who we trust in our organizations to give us advice, and also some of our donors. Have you considered this, or what about this? And we took a step back. I think that the work that we're doing is very meaningful, but it can always be better. I think there's a quote that says, never be satisfied until your good becomes better and your better becomes best. So out of COVID, we birthed the Equity Initiative, which we will pair with the college tour, which students will go through this program, one training a week, and we'll partner with the Racial Equity Institute and NCCJ. Mike Robinson, who is the program director for NCCJ, he is actually one of the main advisors to this project. We really want students to have a very meaningful experience with us when it comes to racial equity. We don't just want to take students to Jackson State. We want them to leave with a very, very clear understanding as to why Jackson State had to exist in the beginning and why it has to exist today. We want people to understand the climate in certain areas as we travel. And that is all a part of our racial equity work. So from that, we had to take a step back again as to how we were doing fundraising. We started to fundraise, aside from the college tour, we started to fundraise for our Equity Initiative. And out of that was birthed the idea to sell shirts. And our shirts were not that expensive to get made, but we sold each shirt for $25. And what we had people who always give, who still purchased a shirt. We had people who we knew would want a shirt and we sent them one anyway. But you'll find that, especially if somebody has something tangible, they'll purchase it. People will give $25, $50 anyway, but if you have something and you say, hey, purchase this for me because it's going to help my work, people will do that. And one of our larger donors said, I think that is a great idea. And she bought a whole bunch of shirts. So our fundraising picked back up and actually exceeded what it would have been at this would have been our downtime where we would have been preparing for our community partners brunch. And we would have been solely focused on that. So this kind of makes up for that. And we exceeded that for what our fundraising would have normally been at this time.
Wow. And Jamie, I would like to add to that, in regards to I'm a Queen, our fundraising picked up because we were actually very visible, showing that we were engaging the kids virtually and how we were social distancing and how we were still doing the work. So we're currently in a fundraiser now because Black Lives Matter. There were a lot of funders, corporations that were just sending money, foundations sending money to nonprofits, and they're still sending money and they're still looking for organizations to fund. So I would like to encourage anyone who has an organization right now, don't stop posting, don't stop sharing, because a lot of us are receiving funding just because. And I know, Miss Renee, you got a story, but a lot of us are just receiving donations out the blue because some people, they didn't go down during the pandemic. Some people's finances went up. So people are still motivated and encouraged to give back to nonprofits. So don't ever underestimate the pandemic, because some of us, I know for us, we're doing pretty well. Does anyone else have a question? Don't miss out, y'all. Let's see. Okay. Now, I know that someone doesn't have a nonprofit. Do you have any nonprofit questions you want to ask versus donations?
It's a safe space, y'all.
Yeah, you want to be. Absolutely. Okay. Well, you know what? I am going to give you back y'all's evening. I would like to let.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Brittany.
How long, and this can go for either of you, how long did you have your nonprofit before you began paying yourself?
I have not received, this is Alana, I have not received a salary with an I'm a Queen. My goal has always been to make sure that we fund the program. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, but we did a session in July where a lady, she explained how she was able to fund her salary, and she's currently at $1 million. So if you want me to send you that link, I can do that as well on how she funded her nonprofit. So Blake, you can answer that question too.
I started paying myself in 2017. I don't take any money from donations. The only time that I do pay myself, which is why I'm still an employee for Guilford County, but I pay myself when I take contracts to do work. So if I contract through the Motivational Foundation with Guilford County to run a mentoring program at a middle school, the money that I receive from that contract, I will pay myself out of it. Or if I get a grant to do very specific work, then I pay myself for that work. And I just started doing that maybe in 2017.
Awesome.
Thank you. That was like a common conversation with a lot of nonprofits because a lot of folks, you put in a lot of work over the years and you still have to either figure out a plan where you can pay yourself if you can pay yourself or otherwise have another job.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct.
Having another job is not a bad thing to do. And I was just telling one of my mentees today, actually, once I am elected to the Guilford County School Board, this gentleman is going to take my current position with Guilford County. But I was telling him today, and this is a safe space, and I'm just going to be real with y'all. I said, I really was able to sharpen the Motivational Foundation once I started working directly in public education because I knew the students, I knew their families, parents, I knew who I was going to be targeting. I gained a lot of notoriety and credibility with different administrators in the district that I was working in Flint. And it made it very easy for a counselor to call me and say, hey, I got somebody I think would benefit from your program. So that is kind of how I grew the foundation, by working another job. So if you can work a job that kind of lines up with the work that you're doing with your nonprofit, that would be very helpful.
Very true. Okay. Jamie says she would be interested in the link. So I am looking for that for you so I can put in the chat. We'll take our final question before we close out.
You have one additional question. This is
Okay.
Jamie.
No problem.
Now this is more so kind of pre-COVID. And this is for either one of you. As far as supporting the organization and looking for grants for the organization, how did you kind of go about doing that outside of doing individual donations from your donors that you have?
So Jamie, I'll answer that question. I'm a part of the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium, and they sent out for this area, they sent out grant announcements or RFPs. So what I would do is I would sign up for those foundations e-newsletters. Look for the notifications there, and then also sign up. It's called Philanthropy News Digest, but it's now turned into Candid, and they send out RFPs every day. So pretty much grant proposals or requests for proposals. So looking for information, and then also just coming across opportunities where people were interested in funding the organization. So I'm a Queen has been really successful with individual donors, not so monthly donors, but we've always been successful with the individual piece. But we find grants pretty much through the consortium. So if you're in North Carolina, I think that's a good resource for you as well. Blake, you got anything?
I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. I have not been as successful with grant work here in North Carolina, and that is typically because I'm doing a million other things. But in Michigan, I had a gentleman who ended up going to work as the CEO of the community foundation, and he was always, you know, maybe you should take a look at this. Maybe you should. And of course, you know, he would sing my praises in some of those board meetings. But we were able to secure some grant funding because we had somebody in our corner who knew the work that we were doing, who knew that we were at that time not bright enough to go out and seek out these grants ourselves. So they were sliding it to us on the sneak. Not saying that he was doing anything illegal, because we still had to apply and do everything else, but it helps if you are connected with somebody like Alana. You know, she just told you about all of that. So to just have somebody send you an email that say, hey, this sounds like something that you would be interested in, maybe you should take a look at it. Connect with people like that. Yeah,
and to piggyback off of that, I know you can't go to the library now, but there is a link that will take you to the foundation directory. So at the public library, you're able to look up foundations that fund organizations similar to yours. So what you would do is you would put in, if you start women and girls, senior citizens, environment, health issues, you would put those those keywords in, and then put the city and county of where you're at. And what that directory is going to do is going to pull the names of foundations that fund organizations like yours, and you're able to see how much money they're giving away, who they're funding, and then you can also pull their 990, and with the 990 you can also see in detail who they're funding as well each year. So it's a free resource. You can't really do it from your house. Well, you can't do it from your house after COVID, but there is a link right now where the library is giving you like limited access to be able to find those foundations. So if anyone wants that, please put your email in the chat and I'll send that to you. It takes a lot of research, but it is beneficial for you to know who has an interest in funding organizations similar to yours. Somebody, Sade, yes, please. Girl, I did your research. Casey Andrews, I didn't know you were on. Yeah, I do. I should do a webinar on grant research because you would love it. All right. Any more questions?
I do want to put a shameless plug out here. On Saturday, we are having an event. It's a social distance event. It is a shoe drive for one of my good friends, Jeremy Porter. He lost his son in a car accident. His son was 15 years old. He was the passenger. There were 5 young men in the car. 4 of them passed away. And Justin Porter, who passed away, his 16th birthday was this week. And to commemorate his birthday, we are hosting a shoe drive on Saturday at DTLR. I believe that's in the mall, from 11 until 4 p.m., 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. So bring your mask and your hand sanitizer and come out and just check on us.
I don't think that was a shameless plug. I think that was an awesome plug because I think a lot of people were impacted in the community when we heard that story. Even if we didn't know that child. We felt for that child because it was right after Father's Day, and you know, yeah. So okay, so we have people have the information in the chat, so we have that. So I guess I don't have a shameless plug. So our next conversation is going to be, Lord, let me share this screen. So on September 17th, we're going to have our next conversation on PR and marketing. So for some of you who don't know, I have been a public relations professional for almost 15 years. And my friend Portland, she also has worked with nonprofits. So we want to teach you how to do PR and marketing on a nonprofit budget. So that means, how do you secure media interviews? How do you prepare yourself for radio, PSAs, podcasts, different things like that. So the next conversation will be September 17th. I will send this information out to you all so that you'll have it. And it's going to be awesome. And then in the future, I am looking to do a grant writing class for my clients. So I hope to send that information out pretty soon. And Blake, do you have any final words that you would like to leave us with?
I want to just thank you, Alana. Listen, you are somebody. Let me tell y'all about Alana. When I first started getting connected real good in this area, everybody kept saying, you got to meet Alana. Do you know, you had an office at Revolution Mill?
No.
Downtown somewhere?
Mm-mm.
Everybody kept telling me I had to meet you though, because of the work that you were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So to be asked to share this space with you at this time is a true honor to me. And I'm going to be logging in on the other sessions, learning all that I can learn, because there's always something to learn. And y'all don't get discouraged. Don't give up. Rest if you must, but don't quit. Keep going, because you have to think. And a lot of our stories with the foundation are so intertwined. Like, man, had we never did this, this would have never happened.
Mm-hmm.
Got to think about that. Like, if you quit today, there is a young man or a young woman or a senior citizen or somebody who won't receive the services that they need in that time. So just keep chipping away at it. I'm proud of everybody on here. I appreciate this space, and I'm looking forward to learning from you all as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And look out for emails from me, okay? Everyone have a great evening. Bye-bye.
All right. See
Thank
ya.
y'all.
Thank you.